All rise. All rise. Ladies and gentlemen, honorable members of the Tribunal, good morning. The People's Tribunal on the 13th General Elections. Ladies and gentlemen, honorable members of the Tribunal, good morning. The People's Tribunal on the 13th General Elections is now in session. I take great pleasure in introducing the honorable members of the Tribunal. From your far left is Your Honor, Reverend Dr. Herman Shastri, Your Honor, Dato' Azad bin Kamaluddin, Your Honor, Professor Yash Palgai, and Your Honor, Professor Ramlan Sulbakti, and finally, Your Honor, Dr. Mavis Putuchery. Members of the public, please be reminded to observe our code of conduct. Thank you.
You probably know the background to the establishment of the tribunal. The tribunal was appointed by Bursay in order to investigate any irregularities that may have occurred in the conduct of the last elections. There has been considerable demand for electoral reform here, and another objective of the tribunal, apart from investigation of any irregularity, is to examine the norms of an effective and fair electoral system. And so we will be both investigating the conduct of the last elections, as well as considering recommendations for reform of the electoral system. The tribunal owes its legitimacy to the people of this country who have jointly established us. We are an independent tribunal. Very detailed rules of procedure have been established for the conduct of our proceedings. I believe you probably have the brochure which sets out the process that we shall follow, and we want to emphasize that we are independent and that anyone who wishes can address us. The bulk of the evidence that we shall consider would be presented by the counsel to the Commission, Professor Gurdiyal Singh, and to contest the evidence if they wish, and we wish to preserve transparency in our proceedings. So I won't say more at this stage, but call upon Professor Gurdiyal to begin his submission.
Thank you, Your Honor and Honors. Very good morning to the people gathered here. Let me begin by introducing the key players in our 30-odd members of our legal team. After before we call the first witness. Your Honor, the 13th Malaysian general elections of May 5th May 2013 were easily the most hotly contested in the 50-odd years history of this country. It was won by the Barisan Nasional by a 133 to 89 majority. However, the popular vote was won by the opposition coalition, known as the Pakatan Raya. This spurred widespread disquiet among the populace. Reports of a range of manipulations emerged, and they have indeed generated animated discussion in coffee shops, in hawker stalls, in universities, in offices, and even in the corridors of power. Bersih, which translates to clean, a coalition of 84 NGOs, which has been at the forefront of the fight for free and fair elections since its launch in November 2010, took the rather bold and historic step of sponsoring this People's Tribunal to examine the allegations and counter-allegations. The terms of reference require not only an examination of the testimonies and evidence to verify the validity of these allegations, but more importantly, whether these are systemic and germane to the electoral process. These issues are best presented in the calm and tranquil atmosphere of this makeshift courtroom, so that findings and recommendations can be made by your honors, fair of judgment, free from the heat and bitterness of election contestation and the wounded pride of the protagonists. We will be presenting evidence over the next 5 days from a wide variety of sources. The evidence has been secured by our legal team of some 30 to 40 lawyers. They're in a state of flux. They have followed leads, interviewed witnesses, verified their stories, and the most cogent of these have been reduced into statutory declarations and written statements. Witnesses will testify. Some sworn statements will be rendered in absentia of residents of countries overseas. Experts will give their voice to the integral components of free and fair elections, such as money politics, the role of the media, gerrymandering, and malapportionment of constituencies. Given the time constraints, we will be presenting a sampling of evidence in respect of 3 broad typologies. Manipulation of the legislative framework underpinning elections, in other words, the laws that exist that could or could not prejudice free and fair elections. Then the second is the manipulation of voter choice, the choice made by individuals, to what extent it could or may have been subverted, and the manipulation of the administrative process, the process by which the elections were carried out. We will also have a special focus on the Election Commission, which is constitutionally entrusted to carry out elections in this country. We will present our evidence in a temporal flow, so we will start, as we said, upstream, midstream, and downstream. So we will start with matters preceding the election, manipulation of the legal infrastructure governing elections, the integrity of the electoral roll, and all matters that are designed to ensure that when elections arrive, the stage is set to implement free and fair elections by a properly enfranchised citizenry. In this context, we will present evidence of an analysis of the electoral roll for the presence of phantom or dubious voters. The key questions here would be, were those not entitled to vote enfranchised, and those entitled disenfranchised? We will present first-hand evidence of the practice, that is the management of operations, for you to determine whether the seeds of manipulation are intrinsic to the construct of the electoral framework in this country. All this, as I said, represents the upstream stage of the electoral process. Then we come to the midstream stage, which relates to the manipulation of vote choice. That is, influencing voters in various ways that interfere with his or her free choice, subverting. This can begin even before the legal underpinnings of an election are in place, and can continue right up to the point at which ballots are cast. This is the campaign period before and after an election is announced. Evidence will be adduced on the way in which the media, the crucial informational link between contesting parties and the electorate, the way in which media behaved. For you, Your Honours, to determine whether they acted in furtherance of promoting free and fair elections or otherwise. Use of government, state funds and resources, the role of money politics, dirty art manipulation of a racist and even seditious kind to thwart people into voting on the basis of rabid racist incitement in what we would suggest would are flagrant violation of election laws. Intimidation and, as you will see, even extreme violence. There will also be testimonies of vote buying, the promise of goods, large sums of money, including from government coffers in return for votes. Finally, the downstream stage will see evidence presented in relation to the voting process, the custody, or maybe you could say the miscustody of ballot boxes containing advanced votes, an important component which expert evidence suggests could potentially affect the outcome in some 30 parliamentary seats. And given the margin by which the government of the day won the elections, it could determine which coalition party forms the government itself. We look at the denial of forms that tabulate votes counted, the alteration of figures as to votes issued as well as counted, and even in some cases, denial of the presence of candidates and even polling agents in the process where counting took place. All this will also involve an assessment of the Election Commission, more particularly to examine not just de jure in law, but more critically de facto independence. We will present evidence of how the EC conducted the elections. Related issues, but just as important, are the delineation and apportionment of seats. And as has recently become a very live issue in this country, whether aggrieved candidates are able to seek redress through an independent judicial process. Your Honours, we will seek your guidance throughout the proceedings as to the mode of presentation of the evidence, given the large number of witnesses and documents that have emerged. We have almost flooded Your Honours with 2 boxes of very substantial documents. And we have a little more to add. But of course, justice cannot be sacrificed at the altar of expediency. We undertake to adhere scrupulously to the rules of fairness reflected in the rules of procedure and evidence for this tribunal. In this context, we have invited all potential parties or organizations referred to in these proceedings to attend from across the political divide, so that Your Honours will have a comprehensive, balanced overview and understanding of what exactly transpired in the General Election 13. We, of course, have no power. We wish we had, but we have no power to compel attendance. Nonetheless, we cherish the hope that the affected and involved parties will attend so that we can all collectively, as a nation, advance democracy for us, our children, and indeed Your Honours, before we begin, perhaps we, as I undertook, provide the typologies of electoral practice so that Your Honours can follow the evidence of each and every witness in accordance with this typology. you will see, Your Honors, from the typology that I have presented, there are three main headings and several subheadings. The main headings, if I could just very briefly invite your lordships to refer to. First, of course, on page 1 is in bold letters, manipulation of the electoral legislation. And then at the bottom of the page, manipulation of the voters. And then we have two broad categories and many subcategories. And if I could kindly invite reference to page 4, which is manipulation of the process, voting process. And then the subheadings under it. Now this, ideally we wanted to talk, as I said, about upstream. We wanted to talk about, introduce evidence in relation to the electoral roll. Unfortunately, one of our witnesses, our key witness in this respect, will defer giving his evidence for personal reasons until a bit later. That key witness has a statutory declaration, which is statutory declaration 30, numbered 30. We have placed that on your tables for your reference. Comes in 2 volumes. He will present an analysis of the entire electoral roll to see who is on the electoral roll, how did they come onto the electoral roll, whether they should be on the electoral roll or not, and how people were clustered together in groups of 60, 70 in addresses, some of which related to condominiums which even the developer has not contemplated building. So that will be the broad picture. But more specifically, we have today the member of, one of the elected members of Parliament, Mr. Charles Santiago, and he will talk about a particular area in which he contested where these problems in relation to the electoral roll manifested themselves. So bearing in mind that there is a broader picture of electoral roll, he will refer to the specific context in which these problems arose. And he would be actually, if you look at page 5 of the typology, just to keep track, it will be that last bit there, B, manipulation of voter registration and or the electoral roll. So you have a whole host of subcategories: failure to register certain categories, existence of non-eligibles, inaccuracies in the data on the register. And he will also, kindly, if I could refer to page 1 of the typology, it would be also under 1C, regulations on challenge to electoral rolls. So this is the actual regulation itself, which prevents electoral rolls which are patently flawed from being challenged. With that, with your kind leave, I proceed to the witness. Of the document. Is that your signature?
That's my signature.
And you have sworn, you have declared that the statement that you are about to give and that you have given in this statutory declaration is true.
Yes.
Now, I will just highlight some of the aspects of the of your statutory declaration. Now, you say at page 2, paragraph 6, that you instructed your party volunteers in the parliamentary constituency of Klang to conduct a review. Is that correct?
That's absolutely right.
Now, can you tell us what was the outcome of that review. You can refer to paragraph 8 at page 3 if you wish. But you can tell it in your own words, but follow that sequence if possible.
Sometime at the beginning of 2012, we started looking at the electoral roll for Klang, and from our analysis, we realized that about 3,457 names were removed from the 2008 electoral rolls, and about 2,195...
Slowly. So you're saying that you looked at the electoral roll register, we call it electoral roll, and you also compared it with the 2008 electoral roll. People
That's right,
who
yeah.
voted were entitled to vote in the 2008 electoral roll.
So we did a comparison between 2012, the first quarter of 2012, and 2008.
So 2012 would be those who would then be entitled to vote in GE13.
That's right.
You did a comparison. So let's go through it systematically, right? First, you say, what happened first? There were electors who were
Missing.
Who were missing.
Who were missing from the electoral roll.
So they were no longer there.
Or removed, removed, and they were not there. And then we also...
But is that unusual?
No, it's actually quite usual. Quite normal.
Yes. But should they have been on the roll?
Well, some people should have been there, and some people who have died or passed away, their names should have been removed from the electoral roll. That did not take place. And policemen and women who are also being transferred should also be removed from the electoral roll. But that wasn't the case. So when we did a check of the numbers, when we saw 3,457 names, it was a staggering number because it's very high. So we said, hey, something is wrong with these numbers now.
So this is what you record in your 8A, that 3,457 electors were removed from the roll, even though these electors were alive and there was no change of address. They should have been there.
Well, as I said earlier, some of the people who had died should have been removed, but they were not removed. Some people who were transferred, the jobs, meaning the policemen and women, when they were transferred, their names were not there. They should have been removed. And people who were actually registered to vote, their names were also transferred out. Their names
Complaints with regard to those who are registered. Can you elaborate on that?
I had a very interesting case of this young woman by the name of Sharmila Menon, who is now staying in Dublin, Ireland, and who was registered in Klang. She never consented to vote. She never consented to become a voter to begin with, but her name appeared in the electoral roll.
Is this the individual you refer to in 8C?
Okay, 8C is somebody else. I misspoke just now. I'm ahead of myself. 8C is a person who was registered in the Butterworth parliamentary constituency, and at the same time, Shah Alam State Assembly at the same time. And this is not possible. The person actually lives in Klang, in Telopolai Klang, and she never registered to vote.
So just to recap, she never registered to vote.
She never registered to
She
vote.
lives in Klang.
Yeah.
She was registered as a voter in respect of a state seat in Penang.
The state seat actually is in Selangor,
Yes.
but the parliament seat actually is in...
So she did not register and she found herself on the electoral roll of two completely different states.
yeah. This is really bizarre.
Page 4, item D. Can you elaborate on that?
Well, item D basically is, if you want, the border of my constituency, P110, and Klang, and the other side would be Kapa, which are border of each other. Now these people have been, this 500, from our estimation, 500 people had actually voted for the last so many elections in P110 Klang. But now we found out that their names have been transferred out to another constituency. This is, in our view, illegal. Why is it illegal? Because this constitutes what you call a delineation, a constituency delineation, which actually would require parliamentary approval and parliamentary oversight. And that was not the case.
Now you also talk about at paragraph F of a large number of voters being registered in a single address. Can you elaborate on that? Paragraph F.
Well, one of the things that we found from our analysis was that this very famous house, 994 Jalan Papan, Panamaran, which had 60 voters in the same location, same address, 60 people who do not stay in that house, but are actually voters in that particular area, in the particular house, sorry. We have actually a declaration at the back from the house owner that, and actually they had actually gone to the house, 994 Jalan Papan, Panamaran, where they had 60 people. They had actually gone to the house. I saw the slides, the PowerPoint presentation, and so on, and they acknowledged that the 60 people do not live in that house. They acknowledged when it was open, but they can't do anything about it because the law doesn't allow them to make any changes.
Now you say in your paragraph 8, page 3, that you wrote to the EC chairman as he requested a letter asking for a detailed explanation of the irregularities. Is that correct?
That's right. That's right.
Was there a response to that within a reasonable time in your assessment?
Well, the letter was sent, I think, on 23rd of December 2012, a few days after the briefing in Parliament, where the Elections Commission's chairman told me, why don't you send me a letter, and I will look into the matter. When the letter was sent on 23rd, and I don't think we had any response till about February. Having made repeated phone calls and letters to follow up on the matter, we had no response, and the response came only after we filed our case.
I see. So paragraph 12, page 5, you say you filed a case. What was this case that you filed?
Well, the case was basically to ascertain whether these 3,000 names have gone missing and why the 1,000 over names or 2,000 over names were transferred out. And also to clarify why Pramila Menon, who never registered as a voter in Malaysia, how come her name is appearing in the electoral roll? We have a letter from Pramila Menon, which is also part of the affidavit here, in the sexual declaration, who says that I've never registered to vote, neither did I give any consent to anybody to register myself as a voter.
So you filed your action, and if I could refer you to tab you have exhibited the court case that you filed.
That's right.
In the to the statutory declaration, and that, Your Honour, I'm referring to. You filed an action, and that action is exhibited to your statutory declaration.
That's right.
The whole day.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, it is in Malay, in Bahasa Malaysia, but we will provide the gist of it in due course with your kind leave, since we have international, may not be familiar with the language. And you have, now what was the outcome of that court case? Were you allowed, therefore, to rectify all those complaints that you had about the flawed electoral roll?
Actually, it was an interesting conclusion. When our lawyers made the case, and subsequently when the court decided, I think it was a 5-page decision, or maybe 6, or maybe 7, 95% of it was very well, very nice though. Talks about governance, responsibilities of the Elections Commission and so on and so forth. But the 5%, which is the last page, said that the courts have no locus standi to make a decision because of the Rule 9A, which does not allow the courts to oversee the electoral roll once it's gazetted by the Elections Commission. In fact, the court's Justice went one step further and also said that the Elections Commission is not mandated to respond to your letters. So that's how powerful the Elections Commission is.
So you come to, that's tab 5, Your Honour, that we are referring to the judgment is in English, and the witness refers to the judgment at page 43 of Mr. Justice Vanunong, and he says section 9A.
Now a supranational organization, which is overview of the courts itself. So the decisions of when the decisions of the commission, the Elections Commission, cannot be challenged in any court of law. That body becomes too powerful, and I think that's how they always win elections, because it's too powerful, and you cannot challenge them.
So you are suggesting that in a contest between the citizenry and the executive, or the Election Commission as in this case, there is no other recourse. The judiciary abdicates itself. Is that what you're suggesting?
Precisely.
They abdicated their responsibility?
Well, I think in this particular case, the government went to Parliament to make sure that the courts do not have an oversight or responsibility over the electoral roll. And this was made possible after the Likas by-elections in Sabah, where the court actually said that there was clear evidence of fraud, and actually called for a re-election. So after that, Dr. Mahathir, then the Prime Minister, made sure that the courts had no access to that kind of a right, refused the right.
Mr. Gudiyal, could you tell us what the legislation says on this question?
Yes, the legislation is actually set out at page of this. If I could refer to the Elections Act and kindly refer to page 11 of that document, you will see 9A. After an electoral roll has been certified or recertified, as the case may be, and notice of the certification has been published in the Gazette as prescribed by the regulations made under this Act, the electoral roll shall be deemed to be final and binding and shall not be questioned or appealed against in or reviewed, quashed, set aside by the court. So they have covered all possible eventualities for forensic arguments to get around the question. So they have said, you cannot question, you cannot appeal, you cannot review, you cannot quash, you cannot set aside, although the fact that you have no judicial review covers all of these modes. So it's very comprehensive, and as we will submit in our final submission, this was prompted by the fact that there was a review of the electoral roll in a case in Likas, found that electoral roll to be defective, enfranchising those who are not entitled to be enfranchised, disenfranchising those who are supposed to be entitled to act. And as a result of that, Parliament, which consists of the same majority as is presently constituted now, moved for Section 9A. And the judges have, as we will submit later on, abdicated their sacred task of intervening wherever there are contests between the citizenry.
What is the obligation of the Electoral Commission to investigate if there is ground to believe that the allegations or the details provided by a potential voter it doesn't seem to be accurate? Don't they have an obligation to investigate?
Provided the identity cards or my cards as a support for that. Very quickly, we have the names here. And interesting, these names, when we took up one particular case of Dinesh Sivakumar, I'm actually going ahead, I'm trying to answer this question. We met the Elections Commission's director for Selangor, the state of Selangor. it was interesting what he had to say. They recognized the problem, but they said their hands are tied. They cannot change the names once it's already in the electoral roll.
So there is in fact a provision before for a review of the names once they are on the electoral roll itself. The obligation then is on the citizen to examine and then to make his comments as to whether he is on the roll or removed from the roll. But as has been explained, it's a costly affair for each citizen. Now, where is this electoral roll displayed for public viewing so that people can then examine the roll?
You can secure it from the Elections Commission itself. That means every quarter when it's updated, you can get it from a CD copy from the Elections Commission for you to review the roll.
So there is that
I think
sorry. So there is that 2 weeks period. Would not you or your party take the opportunity to go through the rolls to look at, say, for example, the 60 voters who were registered at the same address?
Well, in this particular
Then you would have discovered that there is such a thing.
in the case of the 60 voters, it was done prior to 2008. Although in 2012, there were 2-3 names added into that same address. But this is a particular home or a house where they actually park voters. And there are many addresses like this in Klang where you have 30, 40, 50, or even 60 voters. So there are many addresses like this. It's not the only case.
Okay. Sure, but when you said after the parliament, raised in parliament, there was a briefing and they actually went to establish this particular case that you mentioned, and he admitted that there were, those people were not there,
Yes,
not at that address,
Yeah.
but they said they can't do anything about it.
exactly, precisely.
Maybe I'll just ask the professor. I noticed that the provision says certified or recertified. When would the rolls be recertified in this? I mean, what would they mean then by recertified before gazetting? I suppose during, if there has been that discovery during the 2 weeks period, or?
I think it's only certified after it is gazetted.
I know, but what would, because the provision speaks of after an electoral roll has been certified or recertified, as the case may be. So when would that recertification arise?
I'm unable to answer that question.
Or what is intended by that?
I think our next witness is going to elaborate on some of the provisions.
Okay then.
Some of the provisions. So I think he will. But the point that is being made and which will be surmised in our final submission is the fact that the obligation then is on the voter to look into the roll in that 2-week period. And that's the only opportunity he has of ascertaining whether he is on or off the roll, and of political parties also ascertaining. Now, in this case, it's very interesting. How did you establish that there were 60 people at one address? Did you have to go to that address itself and examine?
When our people checked the electoral roll, we had a list of addresses where you had 60 names.
To investigate this, which is fine, because there must be a period, there must be a timeline. But the problem is that after that, it becomes final and binding. That is where the iniquity lies. That after that, even if you show very clearly it is flawed, there is no judicial remedy. So there can be a situation where the Election Commission acknowledges, as they did in this case, yes, these people should not be there, but sorry, that's how the dice is rolled, that's how the game is played. So that's the problem. Now, for also in this regard, we will be referring later to this, but we will just flag this for the moment, where the Chief Registrar, examine the Chief Registrar, who is the Chief Registrar of Electors, Registrar of Electors and Assistant Registrar Electors, under the Election Registration of Election Regulations 2002, entitled to restore names in the electoral roll or even to strike out names. And this is, we flag it, this is in this, in the election laws book, starting at page 177 and at page 189. What is the time period? Time period. And so there is in fact some provision for the Chief Registrar to look into this, and there is no time period prescribed. So 2 points can be made about this. Maybe I'll preempt my final submission. 2 points can be made about this. The first is that the Election Commission's stance in this regard, that they can do nothing about it, could possibly fly in the face of existing provisions. That's the first point. The second point is that the court's hands-off policy with regard to the electoral roll may not be entirely correct, to put it in its mildest form. Yeah. Now, Mr. Charles Santiago, I proceed. Coming back to your statutory declaration.
A letter to my office saying that his son never registered to vote, but he had a letter from the Prime Minister.
Prime Minister?
Prime Minister of Malaysia.
Then Prime Minister?
No,
the same?
Prime Minister, to address to his son Dinesh, saying, you know, Happy New Year and so on and so forth, and indicating on the side where he should go to vote, his voting area. So the father was stunned. He said, my son never registered to vote. So how come his name is appearing in the electoral roll? So
where was his son then?
His son was in the UK.
Yeah.
He still stays in the UK. And so what he subsequently did was he wrote a letter to SPR Putrajaya, the headquarters of Elections Commission, and then they subsequently forwarded the email to SPR Elections Commission in Selangor. So I wrote to Selangor asking for clarification on the matter, and I told them I'm coming together with Mr. Sivakumar to talk about this in their office, which is what we did on 4th of February.
And then what transpired at the meeting?
What transpired was the following. One, we said we would like to see the documents where Dinesh, the son of Sivakumar, actually had signed a document saying, yes, I want to become a voter. And number two...
he had signed or there was a signature?
No, you have to sign a document
yes.
That says that I would like to be a voter now. We want to see the document that he actually had said that gave the consent. And number two, he also gave, along with that consent, my card, which will say that he's a Malaysian citizen. So he said, we'd like to see that. The answer to that was, I'm sorry, we can't give it to you because it's been processed and it's been sent to Putrajaya. So if you want, you take it up with Putrajaya. That's number one. And number two, in the letter from Selangor SPR to Siva Kumar, the father of Dinesh Kumar, it's interesting, the letter said that his son, Dinesh, was registered by an assistant registrar belonging to a political party. And that political party was UMNO. And in fact, they also named the guy. The name is in the here, but just give me a second. I'll give you a name, his name.
Page 7, 18.1, although the name is not there.
This is the email, Professor Durya. I don't think you have this, but this is the email between SPR Selangor and the father of Dinesh Kumar.
Yeah.
And I read this, it was dated 17 February 2013. And I read this, it's in Malay. Untuk makluman pihak Tuan, setelah semakan dibuat, pendaftaran anak Tuan Encik Dinesh anak lelaki Siva Kumar telah didaftarkan oleh penolong pendaftar parti UMNO, yaitu Hishamuddin bin Qasim. So I asked the director, how many people did this Hishamuddin bin Qasim register?
Just again, I think for the benefit of the honest soul, it says here that they have sort of looked at their books, and Encik Dinesh was registered by Penolong Pendaftar Parti UMNO. That means the details they're giving is the person who registered him is assistant registrar of a political party called UMNO. And they gave his name, in fact, because that document must bear the name. And they said, for your information, his services have been terminated because he has made several mistakes. And if you wish, you can actually contact that particular person, and his handphone number was provided.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I asked the question to the Director of Elections Commission, Selangor. I said, how many, not necessarily in the office, but they work with the Elections Commission. But in this case, it was fraud. So we asked the question, are you going to take legal action against this man? Is there a police report against this man? And the answer was no. So clearly you are condoning fraud here. I think that's a serious crime.
In fact, the whole story about Dinesh and Siva Kumar will be, is in the statutory, one of the statutory declarations, together with documents which have been translated. And that will be SD 32. So perhaps we can flag that SD 32 because it contains all the documents. And he also filed an action in court, did he not?
Yes, he did.
Siva Kumar.
Yeah.
So he also filed an action in court to have himself removed because he would not be here. Is that correct?
That's right.
And what was the outcome of that court case?
The outcome was that the decision was on the same day when the parliament was dissolved. And the court said that the laws does not allow, since parliament has already been dissolved, they cannot make a decision on this case.
Why?
That's what the law says.
I see. I suppose we'll go into that. But perhaps at this point of time I can introduce in evidence statutory declaration of Siva Kumar because it buttresses, it supports what has been testified by Mr. Charles Santiago. So if it's statutory declaration number 32 in the in the yellow bundle. And perhaps I could invite Your Honours to look at page 4 of that statutory declaration. And at paragraph 13, I'll just read very briefly. Paragraph 13, the father of Dinesh says, I verily believe that each application for registration to become an elector must be accompanied by a photocopy of the applicant's My Card, which is identification card. This is confirmed by Selangor EC office via their letter, and that is exhibited. Then Dinesh, his son, informed me that he had neither signed nor applied his fingerprint on any document, nor did he present a photocopy of his My Card to any person or party for the purposes of applying to be a registered elector. At all material times, and in particular on 7th March, which is the day he's supposed to be registered, Dinesh was in the United Kingdom. Therefore, it is clear that the EC and the Chief Registrar Selangor had used Dinesh's personal details without his knowledge or consent to unlawfully register him as an elector. I was advised by Dinesh's solicitors for the application that the process April 2013, at the time I raised the objection to Dinesh being unlawfully added to the electoral roll, that is on 6th February, so it was actually well before Parliament was dissolved. Regulation 25(5) would not apply to stop the Chief Registrar from striking out Dinesh's name off the principal electoral roll. I also verily believe that although Regulation 26 allows a registrar or an adjudicating officer to, for the purposes of considering or determining any application, claim, objection or appeal, which is required to consider or determine under the relevant regulations, summon any person to appear before him to give evidence on oath or affirmation, and may order the production of any documents relevant to any issue which such officer is required to consider and determine. The Registrar of Selangor EC opted not to exercise his power and instead fell back on the grounds of not having received an objection within the time stipulated under Regulation 15, which would have been sometime after 7th March 20. Even though we had discovered Dinesh's unlawful registration only in January 2013. Further, in omitting to remove Dinesh's name from the electoral roll, the EC has caused severe prejudice to Dinesh in particular, and also to the process of democracy, Malaysia's democracy in general.
Professor Duga, can I just add an extra sentence on this?
Yeah, sorry, carry on.
He actually made a police report. Once he found out that his son was registered as a voter, he made a police report. So nothing came out of it. Till actually this thing was exposed in the media after meeting the Selangor director. But the police, instead of investigating, actually told him to withdraw the case. So this is an interesting development, how the police works together with the election commission.
Yes. So the police report is also exhibited to this Siva Kumar's SC32. And until today, has either the election commission or the police instituted any action against this registering agent?
Not that I'm familiar with.
Now, I return to paragraph 19, page 7. You say that as a result of your application, which was which was presented in the media, in other words, there's media coverage, other individuals started to come out, as it were, to complain about the fact that they also had their names and were not registered. Is that right?
Absolutely right.
How many were there of such people?
I think including Dinesh should be 12.
12. And if you look at your page 8, you identify one other case, 19.2. Can you tell us something?
Professor, before you go there,
Yes.
I'll just go back to number 19.
Yes.
where the 10 other individuals had come forward. I have an email correspondence with a Malaysian doctor by the name of Mahalakshmi Selvanathan, and I read what she wrote to me.
Yes, one second. This is your email correspondence, is it?
Yeah.
Your Honor, we have the bundle here of those email correspondence, but we're in the process of translating it for the benefit of our international judges. Yes.
She says, hi sir, I'm Mahalakshmi Selvanathan, and I checked my voters.
Is your the email, can you please get the date first?
Tuesday, April 9th, 2013, 7:27 p.m. And she says, I checked my voter status, and it shows I'm a registered voter. I have never once in my life registered as a voter, as I never saw a reason to vote till now. And when my friend posted about phantom voters, I was in a surprise as my name was registered as a voter. I have migrated to Adelaide past 1 year, and I'm currently working as a doctor here, and I'm married to an Aussie citizen. I worked for the Kementerian Kesihatan Malaysia, or the Malaysian Health Ministry, before, and I also have a MIED loan running. And she gave me a IC number and so on. And then we also have 2 women from United States with the same problem. And then we have a Praveen Kaur. And at the time when she was registered, she was staying in Australia. And then when she got back to Malaysia, she realized she's also a registered voter. Her email is here that she sent, and I can read that if you want.
Yes, briefly, yes.
My name is Praveen Kaur. This is dated Tuesday, April 9th, 2013, 11:23 a.m. And it's actually addressed to our staff, JJ. My name is Praveen Kaur Sindhu, and I reside in Southern Parkland. She gives the IC number as well. On Saturday, 30th March, 2 volunteers from a political party visited me and handed me a newsletter from our state government, which is the Pakatan Raya state government. On the letter, it was stated, and that I was a registered voter, and the details of the appropriate constituency were indicated. I was completely shocked. As to my knowledge, I have never registered as a voter. When I further recall, I remember receiving a Christmas, New Year, Chinese New Year greeting cards from our Prime Minister, and they all had the same constituency details. By that time,
And then perhaps you can come to 19.2.
Cases like 19.2, where people have passed away, but their names are still in the electoral roll, is quite common. And people who are living also registered. In this case, one individual came forward after finding his family member's name on the electoral roll, despite the family member having passed away 20 years ago. These are some of the things, reports that you get. That people come to you and say, hey, look, so-and-so has passed away, but the name is still in the electoral roll. It's quite common, happens.
Well, there is an obligation on the family member to report the death and then to have his IC removed, is there not?
Well, the process would be that the police would inform the necessary authorities, because the police will be informed, and it's incumbent upon the police to inform the various authorities, including the elections commissions in this case, to withdraw the name.
In fact, therefore the
registration department.
Yes. We have here in our country, for your honors, we have a registration system. So this is run by the National Registration Department. So they are the ones who provide us with the ICs and remove these ICs. In fact, the ICs, even for burial, stuff like that, you need to have a death certificate and surrender your IC. Are you aware of that?
Yes.
Yes. So you have to act, you can't bury or you can't cremate until you surrender, you get a death certificate and you surrender your IC. Now, the NRD, you may or may not know, I hope you know because you are our legislator, the NRD has a list of dead people, do they not?
Well, they should have.
Yeah. EC, did you or did you not raise the fact with the EC that they could liaise quite easily with the NRD to obtain a list of these dead people?
Well, I think this is one of the perennial problems with the Elections Commission, where they put the blame on the NRD for not informing them. So always the bad guy here will be the NRD. Elections Commissions, they play this very nice, good cop approach, where the bad cop is actually the NRD. As Professor Duggal said, that once a person expires or dies or passes away for burial purposes, you have to have that IC, and that's given to the police, which is also then handed over to the NRD. And NRD, by right, should inform the Elections Commission. There must be some way they interface information. There must be some computer interface. And you see, because the Elections Commission also knows that they have passed away. Because when they responded to us later, they said so-and-so has already passed away.
So they knew of this fact.
Yeah.
Now this, the explanation that is given by the Election Commission, albeit much later after he filed the case, perhaps prompted by the fact that he filed the case, we have got it here. We shall make it available. Again, I think we can get the registrar to give 5 copies, Your Honours. The only problem again is that it is in Bahasa, and we will try to see, of course, Your Honour, Ramlan will have no problem, but perhaps Professor. There's 139 of this green coloured book that has been given, Federal Constitution. It's Article 115, actually. Yeah, okay, I'll read this slowly. It's rather long. It's headed 115 says Assistance to Election Commission. Then it says the Election Commission may employ such number of persons on such terms and subject to such conditions as the Commission may, with the approval of the Young Dipertuan Agong Naro King, determine. Then this is the important part. Article sub 2, 1152. All public authorities, the National Registration Department is a public authority, shall, mandatory, on the request of the Commission, give the Commission such assistance in the discharge of the duties as may be practicable. So this is the point I want to emphasize. That is actually a constitutional mandate for the exercise of their power and an obligation for the others to render this assistance. It's a constitutional mandate, not under regulations, but under this. So the fobbing off of duties from one department to another is actually a violation, as we contend, of the constitutional task entrusted to the Election Commission itself, as we will be submitting finally. Yes. And then, of course, if I could refer to the, I'll call it the blue book, the election laws, and invite your kind attention to page 175 of that book, which is Elections, Registration of Electors, Regulations 2002. And I read from page 180, which is Regulation 10, bracket 2. Page 180, Regulation 10, bracket 2. Or maybe 10.1 first. The electoral roll prepared under the relevant regulations and certified by the Election Commission on or before 31st December become the principal electoral roll under these regulations. For the purposes of revision, the registrar shall every 3 months prepare a list of the names of electors from the principal electoral roll who have died, have become disqualified for registration, and the registrar shall update the principal electoral roll by deleting the names of electors who have died or have become disqualified for registration. So specifically, that is an obligation to revise this list. And this therefore necessarily presupposes a communication or an interface, to quote Mr. Mr. Charles words, an interface with the relevant departments. In this case, when we talk about death, it means the NRD. Now that deals with the question of the electoral roll, but since we have you with us, we know you have a flight to catch.
The Friday morning. So, I mean, you know, when people call, you want to corroborate the information. So when I got that information, I called the other owners who I'm familiar with and the association involved, and they too had received similar information from their workers that some of them were being approached to vote on Sunday, and they would be paid 500 ringgit on Sunday if they had come to vote, and the time where they're supposed to meet and so on will be told to them as and when necessary. That's number 29.
Okay, then?
So what we did was, based on that, we posted people in different polling stations, which we thought could be vulnerable to phantom voters.
Phantom voters?
Yeah.
Yes. And then, at paragraph 23, you actually talk about an incident that could possibly relate to phantom voters, maybe in your own succinct way.
Yeah, well, my staff and I, we arrived at the Sekolah Menengah Teknik plant at approximately about 3 o'clock, and we saw a huge crowd of people in front of the gate. The first thing I did was I walked in and I came out, and then I was going out. It was very interesting because there were two, what I thought, this is an unfair statement to make, but
Never mind, I think parliamentarians make unfair statements all the time.
Two men who looked very Indonesian were being escorted out by the police into a police van. And a lot of people were going after the two men because early on they were given the police vest to wear to get into the voting area or into the school. So when the two of them came out, the crowd actually went for the two of them. But the police, this is interesting because your average policeman will not get involved in this. But these two policemen, or these three policemen who were there, actually did a lock, meaning that they put their hands together, put these two guys, and brought them out outside the gate. And very conveniently, the police van comes and they throw the two guys into the van and they go off. Now, are they Malaysians? I have no way to know. Are they migrant workers? I also have no way to know. But they definitely looked migrant workers to me. And they definitely looked very Indonesian to me. I wrote a letter to the police asking to clarify who these two people were and why the police, what did the police do once they took them in. The police responded by saying that these two were Malaysians. In fact, they had made a police report against what happened on that day, and the police actually had come back with them to identify who actually tried to stop them from coming out of the gate.
Yes, of course, I'm bound to say that, we'll have to evaluate, we'll be submitting that evidence has to be evaluated for what it's worth, because suspicion, no matter how powerful, always remains a suspicion. It's no substitute for proof. But
and the day before.
Yes, just a second. So we'll put that particular incident in its proper. It's not. It's Exhibit Charles 7, and it has photographs of a lorry with a large number of people reaching out for these generous gifts by the political party at the propitious sign. Yes, and then we want you to come now to conclude. We don't want you to miss your flight. We want you to conclude with this 24. The incident that happened on the evening of polling day itself.
Yeah.
This is 24 at page 10. Yes? In your own words, very briefly.
On the 5th of May, at about, I think, 3:30 to 3:45 or even till 4 o'clock. Individuals had stopped a bus, a charter bus, and smashed the windows and so on and so forth, and got all the occupants who were sitting in the bus to come out and asking to be, and these guys outside were asking them to show their my cards. Show us the my card. Now, what subsequently had happened is that police had brought the bus to the police station. I did not witness the first part where these guys were coming out of the bus, but I saw it over the video much later. But I had a phone call which told me that there's a bus parked in Panamaran police station, Klang, with phantom voters. That's what I got, and I know lots of people were very upset with it, and they were all going to the police station to see what was happening. So I was also there, and I went to the police station to see what exactly was going on. Now, there was a bus there with smashed windows and so on, with 18 people inside the bus. One of them was a Malaysian, the rest were all foreign workers. Now, the bus was brought by the police from Panamaran B School to the police station. And a huge crowd, maybe amounting to about 5,000 people, were forming outside the police station, wanting to know whether this requested an opposition member of parliament to actually appease the crowd, though, because they couldn't do it anymore. They simply couldn't do it anymore because this crowd was getting very big, and traffic was building up, and the number was building from 5,000 to 7,000, and everybody was around, circling the entire police station. So what I did was, they called the SPR, and I took call SPR to come to the police station, the Elections Commission, to come to the police station to verify if 18 of them had indeed voted or not. The police had their separate phone calls. I spoke to the returning officer for Klang, because the returning officer is a member, is the chief of the local council, so I'm familiar with him. I called him, and the police called the EC person. Now, the response was, it's already 5 o'clock now, and the Elections Commission cannot get involved in this anymore. So I told the guy on the other side that this incident took place between 3:45 and 4 o'clock, not at 5 o'clock. And therefore, you have to come here to resolve this matter, because there are 18 people who are being suspected of voting in these elections, and they are migrant workers, minus the one in Malaysia. So you have to come here to resolve this matter, and there are about, at that time, maybe 8,000-9,000 people already surrounding the police station. The answer on the other side was simply that it's 5 o'clock, it's now a police case. Our work is done. Our work is done, it is now the police case. Now the police too had the same response, and therefore we had to come to an agreement how to resolve this, because the crowd wasn't going away and they wanted a resolution of the matter. So we brokered the arrangement that a team of us would go into the bus, take the pictures of all the people who are sitting in the bus, including the finger, where you're supposed to have the indelible ink. Now we took pictures of everybody, and following the next couple of sentences is about what we saw. One, it was supposed to be a chartered bus. According to the owner of the bus, it was supposed to be a chartered bus. But I saw a migrant worker who told me from Tamil Nadu, I spoke to him in Tamil, and he said that he had paid 3 ringgit and 20 cents, or maybe even 3 ringgit 40 cents, from his station, that's Westport, going to Panama, and so on and so forth.
So those
are the people who...
and these are the people who complained and wanted a resolution through the EC or through the police. They were part of the crowd.
They were part of the crowd, which really broke the windows and so on.
Yes, okay. And they are facing criminal charges now, is that right?
That's right. The case is coming up soon.
Yes. Now, you have also said a few other things which we shall leave for submission later on, about recording serial numbers and so on. You say, just to conclude, that page 12, 25.1, 25.2, you say that Barisan National Agent was photographed recording serial numbers of voters, and you got the photograph exhibited. page 12, 25.1. Is that correct?
That's right.
Yeah.
In
And
fact, I was told yesterday, in fact, this was done across the board. In all the polling areas, there were two separate papers. One with a registration, with the number of people who have come to vote. So they take 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and they have that mark all over the paper. And the other one with serial numbers.
And are they supposed to record? Are the polling agents allowed to record?
No, it's against the law. You're not supposed to do that.
And they were doing this in full view of the election officers?
That's right.
25.2, you say a police officer stationed at Tengku Bendahara Azman was photographed recording serial numbers of ballot papers by another of my polling agents. You have a photograph.
Yeah.
You confirm that?
Well, the photograph can confirm it.
Okay. We'll look at that. And then finally, you talk about, can you tell us in conclusion, final conclusion, the wheelchair story of the elderly man, in your
Well,
words?
in this case, the daughter brought the father in the wheelchair to vote. The law allows one person to accompany a person in the wheelchair to vote, help the person to vote. But in this case, the daughter was stopped outside, and this particular man was wheeled into the voting station, where he had told the returning officer or the person responsible in that particular room to vote for the Democratic Action Party.
Just again, so a disabled person should be assisted by a person. Here, his daughter, but she was excluded. He went in, got
So it's kept out.
Yes, he was kept out. And then he went and got the ballot paper, and under the law, he's entitled to ask for assistance in the marking of the paper because he's disabled. Is that right?
That's right.
Yes. What happened then?
Well,
Did he ask for that?
he asked for it, but they said the daughter can't come into the room.
Okay.
So she had to wait outside.
Yeah.
The person responsible in that particular room said, I will help. Well, sitting in Parliament isn't very comfortable.
So what is your take on this?
I think what we are pushing for, or what needs to happen, is a level playing field. A level playing field where rules are followed, stipulated rules are followed and adhered to by all authorities, so police, SPR, and the government itself. What we find is now the rules are stacked against the opposition. Quite clear. It's organized against the opposition. And I think what we're really trying to push for is free and fair elections. What we see is an unclean elections. Even if we have won, and that's because of the level of awareness among people, and it's also very constituency based. But the point is, regardless of where you are, what is important is free and fair elections. That's something we don't have.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chaudhary. Hold on. If there are any questions by your honors for this witness? Sorry.
Yeah, please go ahead.
Yeah. He says it's, I think for democracy you're prepared to miss your flight, right? So,
Yes, if you have a question.
As a matter of interest, were your polling agents able to check, to find out whether those people whose names were on the, on the electoral roll, were there people who voted against those names, people who were dead or who had been put there against their will? Were you able to check that there were people who actually voted?
It's an interesting question. Actually, we sent out all our polling agents to counter-check because we gave us a list of names of people that we suspected were actual so-called bogus voters used at the Royal Commission of Inquiry in summer.
Could I ask, you obviously made valiant efforts to expose the irregularities. Was this, your speeches covered in the media? Were people upset at what was happening? What was the public reaction to your disclosures?
I think beginning 2012, after the first quarter of 2012, there was a systematic campaign on our part to educate people on the right to vote, and also in support of what Brazil was doing as well. So there was a campaign both at the level of the office as well as trying to expose some of these issues to get government attention and to get people's attention. So if there's one reason why we had more votes, it's because people realized that the votes are going to be rigged, and therefore they have to vote in a certain way to ensure that that they have to do what to vote the person that they want to vote. So yes, there was support, but only in the online media, I must say. Online media and also media that are friendly to the opposition, but not to the mainstream media. There was absolutely no coverage in the mainstream media. Yes, even in Parliament there was no coverage in mainstream media, but there were coverage in the online media.
Come back to the question about
One second, the mic.
hello.
Across the divide from both the opposition and other coalitions. That is the answer. So we will get the actual rules and refer to those rules. I think maybe they'll clarify it.
The forms that were submitted by those that the 400, I think the forms that were submitted by, they had to be signed by the actual voter, right, as well.
That's right.
In that case, on those cases, who signed it? No signature of the, sorry, no signature of the actual voters, just the signature of the data.
No, you need to have the signature of the voter himself.
The voters.
Yes.
So what, in that case, there was none.
No, there was. There must have been. Otherwise, it does not fulfill the requirement.
It's just so then that the signatures were of forgeries.
That's exactly what I'm saying. It's wrong. That's why
Forgery, right?
it was. That's why I concur with Professor Guldial that the courts did not catch the fraudulent issues that were underlying the manipulation of votes. Because this guy actually, while the dates are showing that he was registered in Malaysia in the first quarter of 2012, but he was working and residing in the United Kingdom. So how could he have signed it? It's not possible. So somebody is actually signing on their behalf, which is a fraudulent practice. So the courts are condoning fraudulent practices.
The mic, please.
Thank you. I have two questions. Page 7 and 8, paragraph 19 and 19.1. There are 10 individuals registered.
I'm sorry, which number again?
Page 7, paragraph 19, and page 8, 19.1, paragraph 19.1. There are 10 individuals having registered as an elector without them having applied for the same or giving their respective consent for the same. And then 19.1, another 4 individuals found their name missing from the electoral. My question is, who are they? I mean, the 10% registered without their consent and 4 other individuals missing from electoral. Who are they? I mean, the supporter of what party, to be specific?
Well, I am unable to indicate which parties they support. But what is clear is that of the 10 individuals, or the 12 individuals, 11 of them were Malaysians living and working overseas. I think 2 of them were in America, maybe planned.
Yes.
I mean, we have been fighting this for 1 year. The media knew about it. and individuals who have read it in the newspapers had taken this privately with the Elections Commission in open meetings and so on. So if they would like to, they wanted to address the issue, they could have done it. They have the powers to do it, but they refused to. I mean, it's for 1 year. It's been going on in the media for 1 year. And I think the Elections Commission, including the government, they read the online media more than their own newspapers itself. So they know exactly what the issues that we're fighting on. And it was out for display. Everybody knew what was happening. And more people were coming out to say, hey, look, I never registered to vote, but now my name is appearing. How is this possible?
As I understand it, you seem to agree that the irregularities, you cannot say who will benefit from it actually, right? But they are irregularities. And that by itself, I think, should be enough. Whether they benefit you or the government is irrelevant, right? For the integrity, you know. So I think you may be the one to point out a number of these irregularities because you fear that they will be suborned for the other side. But it need not necessarily be so. But I believe it is the fact of irregularities, the fact of the almost non-interference, if you like, by all these authorities that raises the integrity of the rules and the integrity of those administering those laws and regulations. I think that's what you would be concerned with, right? Rather than, well, would it be for you or against you?
I think the integrity of elections is supreme, and clearly that's in dispute at this time.
Yes, Your Honor, I couldn't have put it better. I mean, the whole point of this is to show that is the design of the electoral legislation, is the operation and management of the election by the appropriate authorities, and the process itself, is that beyond question, beyond the design itself. And in fact, the next witness will adduce evidence. A short break before I call on my next witness. Yes. I thank you very much. I just say, I leave it to your, say 15 minutes? Yes. As we say in UN language, 10 minutes for 15. Thank you.
All rise. Ladies and gentlemen, the People's Tribunal will now adjourn and resume in 15 minutes. Sorry, food will only be provided for members of the Secretariat, yeah?